Because of Winn-Dixie, Chapter 11. That night, there was a real bad thunderstorm. But what woke me up wasn't the thunder and lightning. It was Winn-Dixie, whining and butting his head against my bedroom door. Winn-Dixie, I said, what are you doing? He didn't pay attention to me. He just kept beating his head against the door and whining and whimpering. When I got out of bed and went over and put my hand on his head, he was shaking and trembling so hard that it scared me. I knelt down and wrapped my arms around him, but he didn't turn and look at me, or smile or sneeze or wag his tail, or do any normal kind of Winn-Dixie thing. He just kept beating his head against the door and crying and shaking. You want me to open the door? I said. Huh? Is that what you want? I stood up and opened the door. Winn-Dixie flew through it like something big and ugly and mean was chasing him. Winn-Dixie, I hissed. Come back here. I didn't want him going and waking up the preacher, but it was too late. Winn-Dixie was already on the other end of the trailer, and in the preacher's room, I could tell because there was a spring sound that must have come from Winn-Dixie jumping up on the bed, and then there was a sound from the preacher like he was real surprised. But none of it is lasted long, because Winn-Dixie came tearing back out of the preacher's room, panting and running like crazy. I tried to grab him, but he was going too fast. Opal, said the preacher. He was standing at the door to his bedroom, and his hair was all kind of wild on top of his head, and he was looking around like he wasn't sure where he was. Opal, what is going on? I don't know, I told him. But just then, there was a huge crack of thunder, one so loud it shook the whole trailer. And Winn-Dixie came shooting back out of my room, and went running right past me, and I screamed, Daddy, watch out! But the preacher was still confused. He just stood there, and Winn-Dixie came barreling right towards him, like he was a bowling ball. And the preacher was the only pin left standing. And wham! They both fell to the ground. Uh-oh, I said. Oh, Bo? Said the preacher. He was lying on his stomach, and Winn-Dixie was sitting on top of him, panting and whining. Yes, sir, I said. Opal, the preacher said again. Yes, sir, I said louder. Do you know what a pathological fear is? No, sir, I told him. The preacher raised his hand and rubbed his nose. Well, he said after a minute, it's a fear that goes beyond normal fears. It's a fear that can't be talked out of or reasoned out of. Just then, there was another crack of thunder, and Winn-Dixie rose straight up in the air like somebody had poked him with something hot. When he hit the floor, he started running. He ran back to my bedroom. I didn't even try to catch him. I just got out of the way. The preacher lay on the ground, rubbing his nose. Finally, he sat up. He said, Opal, I believe Winn-Dixie has a pathological fear of thunderstorms. And just then, just when he finished his sentence, here came Winn-Dixie again, running to save his life. I got the preacher up off the floor and out of the way just in time. There didn't seem to be a thing we could do for Winn-Dixie to make him feel better. So we just sat there and watched him run back and forth, all terrorized and panting. And every time there was another crack of thunder, Winn-Dixie acted all over again like it was surely the end of the world. The storm won't last long, the preacher told me, and when it's over, the real Winn-Dixie will come back. After a while, the storm did end. The rain stopped, and there wasn't any more lightning, and finally the last rumble of thunder went away, and Winn-Dixie quit running back and forth. He came over to where me and the preacher were sitting, and cocked his head like he was saying, What in the world are you two doing out of bed in the middle of the night? And then he crept up on the couch with us in his funny way he has, where he got on the couch an inch at a time, kind of sliding himself onto it, looking off in a different direction, like it's all happening by accident, like he doesn't intend to get on the couch, but all of a sudden there he is. And so the three of us sat there. I rubbed Winn-Dixie's head and scratched him behind the ears, the way he liked. The preacher said, There are awful lot of thunderstorms in Florida in the summertime. Yes, sir, I said. I was afraid that maybe this He would say we couldn't keep the dog, who went crazy with a pathological fear every time there was a crack of thunder. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on him, the preacher said. He put his arm around Winn-Dixie. We'll have to make sure he doesn't get out during a storm. He might run away. We have to make sure to keep him safe. Yes, sir, I said again. All of a sudden, it was hard for me to talk. I loved the preacher so much. I loved him because he loved Winn-Dixie. I loved him because he was going to forgive Winn-Dixie for being afraid. But most of all, I loved him for putting his arms around Winn-Dixie like that. Like he was already trying to keep him safe.